Hey guys, welcome back for another video. What we're going to be doing today is we are going to be taking a look at some of our Week 4 college football predictions and best bets for the 2024 college football season. So I already have my Week 4 top 25 predictions for every single matchup for those top 25 teams. So if you want to look at that, go check it out. It is in my history. And I have the best bets version that's going to be coming out tomorrow, where we go over the spreads, money lines, and the over-unders for every single one of those games. But we're going to look at our top top 25 matchups. So we don't just want to stick with those top 25 games. Those are great games, but there's a lot of other really good teams playing. There's a lot of teams that were ranked, but they're not ranked now. Some teams that are playing that aren't ranked now, but they're going to find themselves ranked in the coming weeks. So we want to break those games down, try to predict them, and do our best bets on them, the spreads, money lines, and the over-unders. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. We go over every game for the 2024 NFL and college football seasons. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe so that you can follow along with us. Like I said, this is going to be kind of a quick fire version because we have a lot of games to look at. So we're just going to kind of run through them really quick. Kicking things off Thursday, September 19th, 2024. We have a Sun Belt matchup here. South Alabama at 1-2. They'll be playing Appalachian State at 2-1. Appalachian State, a 7.5-point favorite. The over-under 63.5. Appalachian State has a 53.2% chance to win this game. These are two teams that have pretty decent offenses. So South Alabama, right now, they're actually averaging 48.3 points a game. Appalachian State, 26.3 points a game. Both teams have defenses that leave a lot to be desired. South Alabama gives up 29.7 points per game. Appalachian State gives up 31.7 points per game. But that's obviously a little misconstrued because Clemson put a lot of points on them that one game. They scored 60-something points. That kind of raised their average. But Appalachian State, they have a decent quarterback. They have Aguilar. He can throw. He can run. He's closing in on 1,000 yards through 3 weeks, 5 touchdowns, 2 picks. He's been having a very good season. South Alabama, though, they're averaging 208 yards on the ground, 314 yards passing. Appalachian State, 135 yards on the ground, 324 yards passing. So this game is going to probably be a shootout. I'm going to go with App State to get a win here. I think it's going to be kind of close. I'm going to go with it being about a 34-30 game. I don't think they'll cover that spread. I'm just barely going with the over there, but when you have two teams that can score, basically anything can happen. Now we'll move on to Friday, September 20th at 7:30 p.m. on ESPN. We have 1-1 Stanford. They're playing 2-0 Syracuse coming off the bye week. Syracuse, 9-point favorites here. The over-under's 57.5. That's a pretty big spread there. This is an ACC on ACC matchup because don't forget Syracuse is now in the ACC. Syracuse has a 69.5% chance to win this game. Syracuse is actually a pretty decent team. They have wins versus Georgia Tech. They have wins versus Ohio. And then you have Stanford, who has their lone win versus CP, and they got that really close loss that they had week 1 versus TCU. Syracuse, Stanford. I keep getting the S's mixed up. Stanford, their quarterback is completely inaccurate. He throws a lot of picks. He had as many picks as touchdowns last season, but he is a very mobile quarterback. He will run, so he will make sure to stress Syracuse's defense. But don't forget who Syracuse has at quarterback. Kyle McCord did transfer over from Ohio State. He's been on the massive stages. He's having a really good season at Syracuse this year. He has 735 yards passing, 8 touchdowns, 1 pick. Both of these teams can score. So Stanford's averaging 34, Syracuse 34.5, basically a wash there. On defense, Stanford gives up 20.5 points per game. Syracuse gives up 25 points per game. Syracuse has Kyle McCord. They have Allen. They have Gadsden II at wide receiver. Stanford is going to make this game competitive. This is one of those games to me that's kind of on an upset watch. Anything can happen here. If I were going on this game, I would put my money on Syracuse to win. They're at home in the Dome. I have Syracuse winning this one. It's probably going to be like a 30-23 game. I don't think they'll cover that spread. I'm going to go with the under just barely. This could easily turn into a sloppy shootout. I think it will be close because Stanford's going to run the clock with their running game. The next game on the CW network at 10 p.m. on Friday, 3-0 San Jose State. Props to them. They're having a great season. They'll be playing Washington State Cougars, the old team left over from the Pac-12, although we do have a new Pac-12 conference getting put together. Washington is a 12-point favorite here. The over-under is 55.5. They have a 78.5% chance to win this game. This is a fun game. I'm really pulling for Washington State. They got left in the Pac-12. It's pretty sad, but they've been put together a strong season. They beat Washington, their rival, who left them for the Big Ten. They got some revenge on them in week 3. San Jose State, they're averaging 30 points a game. Solid defense, giving up 13.7 points a game. Washington State, they do run the air raid. Cameron Ward is gone, but Washington State has been able to replace that production. They average 43.7 points a game. They give up 21.7 points a game. They have Matier at quarterback. He has 712 yards, 7 touchdowns, 2 picks. But San Jose State has Brown. He's averaging he has 922 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 2 picks. Both teams like to sling it. San Jose State averages 330 yards passing. Washington State 266 yards passing. But where Washington State has the edge is the running game. San Jose State only 58.3 yards a game. Washington State 220 yards per game. So even though they're running the air raid, they're throwing 266, running for 220. Very balanced on offense. They have Matier. Matier is also the leading rusher. He has 712 yards passing, 314 yards rushing. And they have Williams at wide receiver. This is an interesting game. Both teams can score. Both teams can throw the ball. Where Washington State has the edges: 1, they're at home. 2, they have a mobile quarterback. They can throw it when they need to. They can scramble. They can run it. I'm going to go with Washington State winning this one. Let's say they win it 38-24. Cover the spread, and I'm going with the over. Our next game on ESPN at 12 p.m. We're now moving on to our Saturday games. This is September 21st. The 1-2 Florida Gators versus the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Both teams at 1-2. Both of these teams trying to get to 500. This is 2 teams that are kind of stuck in the mud. Mississippi State, there's not as much blame to them. Jeff Lebby, first-year coach, he has to completely reorganize this roster. That's not the case for the Florida Gators. You have Billy Napier there. He's getting fired this year. Let's just face it. This is his 3rd year. This team is not good. They're way behind other coaches who are also in their 3rd year. Let's say Mario Cristobal, who's obviously built a way better roster. They were behind Mike Elko, who's in his 1st year at Texas A&M. This team has not gotten better in year 3 under Billy. When you look at these 2 teams, you have Florida 6-point favorites here, the over-under 58.5. To me, this game is probably going to be a very high-scoring game. Both teams refuse to play defense. Florida has a 52.7% chance to win this game. Their leading passers, DJ Lagway, 541 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks. We know they played both quarterbacks last week versus the Aggies. They played Lagway. They played Mertz. They both played like garbage. I see why Billy went with Mertz to start, because he's experienced versus a good team. He might do that this week. He might play DJ. It really doesn't matter. They're both going to see the field. Billy needs to try to ignite something, especially with Lagway, to say, hey, look, the future's bright with this quarterback. Bring me back so that I can coach him. He won't transfer if I'm here. I don't know that that's going to work, but he has to try to do what he can to save his job. For Mississippi State, they have Shapen coming in. He has 834 yards passing, 7 touchdowns, 1 pick. Florida's averaging 27.3 points a game. Mississippi State, 32 points a game. Florida's giving up 27 points a game. Mississippi State's giving up 26 points per game. This game's virtually a wash. I would say Mississippi State has the edge on offense. Florida has the edge on defense. Florida's on the road. It's kind of difficult. This game could go either way. I would not be surprised who wins this game. The knocks on Mississippi State, they've lost to Toledo. They've lost to Arizona State, who's actually a pretty decent team. They have a pretty good offense. Florida lost to the Aggies. They beat Stanford. They lost to Miami. I would avoid this game completely, but if I had to pick, I would go with Florida winning this one. Let's say a 28-17 28 to 24, 27 game. Let's say 28 to 24. I do not have them covering that spread, and I'm going to go with the under. If Mississippi State won this flip-flop, the same score, I would not be surprised. The next game we're going to look at on the ACC network at 12 p.m., we have 2-0 James Madison visiting 3-0 North Carolina Tar Heels, Mac Brown's team. The Tar Heels at home, they are 10.5-point favorites. The over-under is 47.5. UNC has a 68.9% chance to win this game. UNC's banged up. Mac Johnson got hurt week 1. They've kind of been sputtering since then, trying to replace that experience at the quarterback position. James Madison better not win this game. This is a home game for UNC. They have to blow them out. That's a big spread there. James Madison, they do not have a good offense. They have a decent defense, but obviously there's a massive talent gap here. They average 21.5 points a game. They only give up 6.5 points per game. UNC, they average 34 points a game. They give up 15.7 points per game. Looking at who they've beaten, UNC's basically beaten no one. The only decent team they played was Minnesota, and they did win that game. But they beat CLT, they beat NCCU. James Madison's played no one, so we can't even count that. I'm going to go with UNC to win this one based on Hampton. They averaged 249 yards rushing per game. Hampton, one of the best running backs in the country, had a great season last season. He's following that up this season. He has 416 yards, 3 touchdowns. They're going to run it down James Madison's throat. I have them winning this one 38-17, covering the spread and going with the over. Our next matchup's Big 12 on Big 12, the 1-2 Houston Cougars, Fox Sports at 12 p.m. visiting the 2-1 Cincinnati Bearcats. We know that the Cougars have Fritz there. He's their new coach, new scheme, new coaching staff. Had a lot of players transfer out. He is retooling this roster, so that's put him at a disadvantage for a lot of his games. Cincinnati, 3.5-point favorites. The over-under is 47.5, and the Bearcats have a 61.9% chance to win this game. Cincinnati last season, very successful at running the ball. Houston's having a lot of offensive issues because pretty much their entire offensive roster transferred. They're only averaging 17.3 points a game. They're giving up 16.7 points a game, so a decent defense, but it's a wash when the offense can't get a first down. Cincinnati, they average 30.7 points a game. They give up 21.3 points a game. Where Cincinnati has the edge is obviously on offense. You have Sorsby. He has 900 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, no picks. You have Corey Kiner as the running back. He's having a great season, 48 carries, 326 yards. Cincinnati, very balanced. They throw for 297.3 yards per game. They run for 213.7 yards per game. Very balanced. Averaging just over 500 yards of total offense. Houston runs, well, they throw for 230. They run for 111. Cincinnati's, so they barely lost to Pitt. That's a good loss. They beat Townsend. They beat Miami of Ohio. Houston's beaten Rice. They lost to Oklahoma. They lost to UNLV, who's also a pretty decent team. I could see Houston getting the upset here, but I'm going to go with Cincinnati winning this one. Let's put it at a 28-21 game. I have them covering the spread, and I have it, that would be just barely going over. The next one here should be a really fun one on ESPN2 at 12 p.m. The 1-2 Kansas Jayhawks versus the 1-2 West Virginia Mountaineers. This is two teams that have disappointed. Neil Brown's team in West Virginia won 9 games last season. I don't think they're going to get back to that this season. This is a very talented team, a very successful running team. Kansas, a bigger disappointment. Very, very disappointed in Kansas this season. They were ranked. They fell apart. They lost to Illinois. They lost to UNLV. And their offense did not look good. There was guys open on defense. Daniels has had an awful season. The guy's never healthy. He was a great quarterback, but he was never healthy, never got to play a full season. This season, everything was in front of them. They had a fully healthy Daniels. He was going to throw for 3,200 yards. He was going to run for 700 yards. He was going to have a great season. He was going to get Kansas to the Big 12 championship. He's fully healthy. And he's playing worse than ever. He's having an awful season, 442 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 6 picks. His throws are awful. They're high, they're low. I think it's that they lost their offensive coordinator. Something's gone wrong there. The offense is not playing up to Kansas. They should have the best offense in the Big 12, but they're not playing like it. And what about Neal? They have a top 5 running back, and it's not helping their offense in any way whatsoever. West Virginia, yes, they lost to Penn State. They lost to Pitt. Those are 2 decent ACC. Well, Pitt's a decent ACC team. Penn State's a top 10 team with a top 10 defense. A really good offense under Drew Aller. That's a fine loss. Pitt, I can give up that loss. But West Virginia, they can move the ball. So Kansas averages 28.3 points a game. West Virginia, 31.7 points a game. Kansas, they're giving up 16.3 points a game. West Virginia's giving up 28.7 points a game. So they do leave a lot to be desired on defense. When you're looking at this roster, like I said, West Virginia can run the ball. Green's throwing for 607. Donaldson Jr., 246 yards passing. Daniels, 442 yards passing. As I said before, Neal, 330 yards rushing, but it hasn't helped the offense at all. They need to get this ship right. West Virginia's a favorite here, 2.5-point favorite, over under 56.5. I was going with West Virginia, but Kansas, you gotta get this ship right at some point, right? I have Kansas getting the upset win on the road, winning this one 34-27. So obviously that spread not getting covered, and I'm going with the over. If West Virginia won this game, I would not be surprised because Kansas has disappointed every single game this season. They could do it one more time. They could do it this week. But this is a team that was supposed to compete for the Big 12 championship. So I have them finding themselves at some point, but I would avoid this game because all they've done is disappoint this year. The next game we're looking at is an SEC on SEC matchup on ESPN. At 3:30, the 2-1 Arkansas Razorbacks, who had that really close loss versus Oklahoma State, or they would be undefeated and probably ranked, versus the 2-1 Auburn Tigers, who had that loss. Cal came into Auburn, beat them in their own house, but nonetheless a decent team, much improved under Hugh Freeze. You have Auburn as a favorite at home, 3.5-point favorite, over under 58.5. Auburn has a 59% chance to win this game. Both teams' offenses are much improved over last season. You have Arkansas being led by Green, 806 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. They're averaging 46 points a game. They are giving up 22 points a game. Auburn had a top 30 defense last season, but an awful offense. So far this season, outside of the Cal game, they're averaging 44 points a game. A solid defense, again, giving up 14.3 points a game. They're being led by Peyton Thorne, who's not an accurate passer. He's not a great passer by any means. He had that one good season at Michigan State. Outside of that, he's not been very good at all. But they're having a successful season. They're running the ball. You have Arkansas coming in here. They're throwing 342 yards a game, running 259. Auburn throwing 292, running for 189. This game could almost go either way because both teams can score. Arkansas, very balanced, high-powered offense so far. I'm going to go with Auburn getting the win here. I don't think it's going to be too high scoring. I see them winning this one 27-24. That's a push as of right now, and that would be going under. If Arkansas won it, again, I would not be surprised. This is 2 pretty evenly matched teams, but I'm going to go with Auburn's defense at home making the difference. This next game I'm also really split on at 3:30 p.m. on the ACC Network. 2-0 Rutgers versus 2-1 Virginia Tech. Rutgers coming off the bye. Virginia Tech's at home. They're the 4.5-point favorites, over under 44.5. Virginia Tech has a 58.3% chance to win this game. They have wins versus Old Dominion. Marshall lost to Vanderbilt in week 1. That was an awful game. And then Rutgers had a bye, but they beat Akron and they beat Howard. We know that Rutgers under Greg Schiano is going to be a disciplined, defensive-focused team that runs the ball downhill. Their quarterback, he has 377 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, 1 pick. They're averaging 46.5 points per game, but that's been versus really bad competition. They actually had a top 20 defense last season. This year they're giving up 12 a game. Virginia Tech with drones, he has 628 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks. They average 31.7 points a game. They give up 21.7 points a game. So Virginia Tech is pretty decently balanced. They're throwing for 225. They're running for 191. Rutgers is passing for 188.5. They're running for 307 yards per game, being led by their running back, Manaje. I hope I pronounced that right. I remember he had a great season last year, had over 1,000 yards rushing. He has 373 yards this game. They've only played 2 games. I'm going to go with the upset here. I have Rutgers winning this one in an awful, low-scoring, boring game. Let's put it at a 24-20 game. So the spread not getting covered and going with the under. Virginia Tech's the favorite. They can win this game. They can throw. They can run. They are at home, but it's not at night. They're not going to be blacked out. And I think Rutgers defense, they're going to get a turnover, and that's going to make the difference. This next game we won't really go into, but I just want to touch on it. At 3:30 p.m. on ESPN Plus, Youngstown State versus 3-0 Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, there's not a spread yet because it's FBS, FCS, but Pitt's going to beat them pretty bad. Pitt might find themselves in the top 25 after that win. So their quarterback, a Holstein, 939 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 picks. Transfer, they're averaging 40.3 points a game. They're giving up 28.3 points a game. So under Narduzzi, not the Pitt offense of old, but they can run it. They can definitely throw it. They're going to win that game big. But when they win it, like I said, they might find themselves ranked come the new AP poll. This next game sets up to be a really fun one on Fox Sports at 3:30. 3-0 Arizona State versus 2-1 Texas Tech. Big 12 on Big 12, and this game could easily go either way. Texas Tech at home, 2.5-point favorites, over-under tie. It's 60.5. Texas Tech, a 52.6% chance to win this game. Texas Tech last game on the University of Northern Texas. They won 66-21. They did lose to Washington State. They beat Acorn 52-51 in overtime. That was a pathetic showing in week 1. Arizona State, they've beaten Texas State. They've beaten Mississippi State. Nice solid win there. They've beaten Wyoming, which is a decent win. Arizona State averages 36.3 points a game. Texas Tech 44.7. Arizona State gives up 19.3 points a game. Texas Tech gives up 36.3 points a game. This game could go either way. It's 2 teams that can score. Texas Tech is a lot better than their record shows, is a lot better than the pathetic way that they've opened up the season playing. Their quarterback, Morton, he has 974 yards passing through 3 weeks. Taj Brooks, one of the top 10 running backs in the country, great season last year. He has 262 yards a game, but that could make the difference. He's a great running back. But Arizona State, they can move the ball. Scottaboo, the running back, 373 yards. Arizona State averages 208 passing, 229.3 rushing. Texas Tech, they throw for 366.7, run for 180.3. I could see Arizona State winning this one. These games are very close because we're starting to get into conference play now. But I'm going to go with Texas Tech winning this one in a shootout, like a 44-37, 38 game. I'm going to go with them covering, and I'm going with the over. The next game on the CW at 5 p.m., 2-1 TCU visiting SMU, also at 2-1. TCU on the road, 3-point favorites here. The over-under 58.5, but SMU has a 53.7% chance to win this game. TCU, their lone loss this past weekend. The game was theirs. They had a massive lead. They coughed it up in the second half. That was awful. They could be coming into this game 3-0, potentially ranked. They lost to USF. They've beaten LIU. They beat Stanford, and then SMU, they beat Nevada, they beat HSU, but then they lost to BYU in a pretty bad game 2 weeks ago. They are coming off the bye, so they should be rested. They've been kind of shuffling quarterbacks because Peyton Stone has not played well. They've had Jennings coming in. He's the one who filled in for Stone last season. Looking at the offenses, TCU averages 37.7, SMU 34.3. TCU gives up 20.7, SMU 16.3. SMU actually had a top 20 offense last season, top 20 defense. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. TCU really throws the ball really well. Obviously, they run the air raid. They have the Mike Leach offense. Sonny Dykes loves to sling it. Josh Hoover, 1,022 yards passing through 3 games. Cam Cook on the ground, 174 yards. And Beck at wide receiver, 350 yards. I'm going to go with TCU to get the win here. I'm going to put it at like a 28-17 to 24 game, covering the spread but going with the under. I could see SMU winning it. Why? They had the bye week. They have a solid defense. I think it's the quarterback, though, that makes the difference, and TCU pulls it off. The next matchup is Big Ten on Big Ten. We have Northwestern at 2-1 at 7 p.m. on Fox Sports, visiting 2-1 Washington Huskies. Washington 10.5-point favorites, over under 42.5. Washington at home has an 84.2% chance to win this game. They lost to Washington State last week. That was a pretty big loss. They've beaten EMU. They've beaten Weber. They're not a bad team. You know, they were trying to get to 3-0. They did make the national championship last season. They've had a lot of changes. Kalen DeBoer left. Almost the entire team either went pro or transferred. Fish comes in. Will Rogers, the air raid quarterback, transfers over from Mississippi State. Looking at the offenses, Northwestern, who won 8 or 9 games last season, they averaged 21.3 yards per game. Washington averages 28. Northwestern gives up 13.0. Washington gives up 12. So both have had pretty solid defensive play. Will Rogers, 825 yards, 6 touchdowns, no picks. Washington throws for 320, runs for 171.7. Northwestern could get the upset win here. They have a solid defense, very balanced offense, and they had a pretty solid team last season. But I'm going to go with Washington winning a really low-scoring game. Let's put it at like a 24-17 game, not covering. That would just barely be with the over. The next game is just a complete shame at 7 p.m. on ESPN2. 3-0 Cal, new to the ACC. This is ACC on ACC. They'll be playing on the road versus Florida State 0-3. Florida State's at home. You would think that gives them an advantage, but they're 0-2 at home this season. Florida State's the favorite here. They are 2-point favorites. The over-under is 44.5. Florida State, a 58.9% chance to win this game. Florida State's beaten no one, but they've lost to Georgia Tech, Boston College. They've lost to Memphis. They're 0-2 in the conference. This is a conference game. They got to win a conference game this season. They got to get a bowl game. Mike Norvell's feeling the heat. He's not getting fired, but he's feeling the heat on the way he's built this team completely through the portal. He needs to build its foundation up through recruiting. Use the portal to complement you. DJU's played like complete trash. I've been saying he was trash for years. Never thought they should have brought him in. He has never been good. He's a big guy. Great. But he's completely inaccurate. He either overthrows, underthrows. He actually runs very slow for his size. And when he throws accurately, the wide receivers just drop it. And then Cal, very successful on the ground. They've beaten UCD. They beat Auburn in Auburn. They beat San Diego State. If they win this one, they could potentially find themselves ranked. They average 27.7 points a game. Florida State, a top 15 roster, they average 15.3 points a game. Cal gives up 12.3. Florida State gives up 24. Florida State's the favorite here, but I'm not buying it till I see it on the field. I've seen Cal play. I'm going to go with Cal, even though Florida State's the favorite, because they haven't looked any better. They've looked awful 3 straight weeks. Nothing has shown any improvement. They have yet to score over 21 points. I have Cal winning this one. Let's put it at a 24-20 game. So I have the spread not getting covered, and I'm going with the under. This next game could get into a really boring one on NBC at 7:30. We have the 2-1 Iowa Hawkeyes, their lone loss versus Iowa State. They will be visiting the 2-1 Minnesota Golden Gophers. You have Iowa on the road, 2.5-point favorites, over under 35.5. Iowa never has an over-under over 35 because they still have no offense. This game's 50-50. Both teams have the 50% chance to win this game. Iowa's beaten Troy. They lost to Iowa State. They've beaten Illinois State. And then Minnesota, they lost to UNC week 1. That was with the game that Max Johnson got hurt. They've beaten URI. They've beaten Nevada. Minnesota has a solid defense. Both teams have solid defenses here. You have Iowa averaging 32.3 points a game. Minnesota 30.7. Iowa gives up 13.7. Minnesota gives up 6.3. Very good defenses. That's why this is going to be a trench game decided in the trenches by the offensive and defensive lines. Iowa has Cade McNamara. Minnesota has Max Brosmer. The difference here for Iowa is you have Caleb Johnson at the running back position. He has 479 yards through 3 games. They have a new offense. I haven't really seen any change. The offense isn't really improved. But I'm going to go with Iowa getting the win on the road. Kirk Ferentz, longest tenured coach in the country. Solid defense. They're going to run the game. They're going to always play solid special teams. They're always top 5 special teams. I have Iowa winning this one in an awful, boring game. Let's put it at a 20-13 game. I have them covering the spread, but I'm going with the under because it seems like every Iowa game goes under. Now, this game's going to be interesting. On the ACC network at 8 p.m., we have a Big Ten on ACC matchup. 3-0 Michigan State versus 2-1 Boston College, coming off of that really close loss where they took Missouri to the wire. Boston College has beaten Florida State, Doc Queen, they lost to Missouri, and then Michigan State's beaten FAU, Maryland, and PV. Boston College, a 78.9% chance to win this. They're 6.5-point favorites, over under 45.5. Boston College has Bill O'Brien. Michigan State has Smith coming over from Oregon State, and he has Aiden Childs, the 5-star quarterback that transferred over, but this is obviously his first time starting. Michigan State averages 27.7, Boston College 35. On defense, Michigan State gives up 11.3. Boston College gives up 13.3. Both teams have very good defenses. Boston College's quarterback, Castellanos, cannot throw very accurately to save his life, but they do run very well. They throw for 209. They run for 206. Michigan State throws for 256, runs for 162.7. I'm going to go with Boston College winning a lower scoring one, 24-21, not covering the spread, going with the under. This game could go either way. Both teams are probably going to try to keep the game on the ground here. Boston College is at home. We've seen Bill O'Brien win big games before. Great coach. Jonathan Smith, also a very good coach, but I'm going to go with Boston College. Our next game on Fox, well, this is the next and last game on Fox at 8 p.m. 2-1 Baylor Bears. It's Big 12 on Big 12 versus 2-1 Colorado Buffalo. If Colorado wins this one, they may find themselves ranked. I'm not saying that they should be. It's just with the Deion Sanders sideshow, the AP might put them in there just for the heck of it. Colorado's going to be a 1.5-point favorite, over under 54.5. This game is virtually a push. This is an interesting game here because both teams are kind of just sputtering. Baylor, 2-1, Dave Aranda. They beat TAR. They lost to Utah. They beat Air Force. For Colorado, they beat North Dakota State, just barely. They got curb stomped by Nebraska, and they run a decided game last week versus Colorado State. Great win, but they ruined it with the off-the-field stuff after the game. Shedeur Sanders did not show any good sportsmanship, especially a week after he fled the field when Nebraska curb stomped them. There is a massive talent gap here. Dave Aranda is probably going to get fired after this season. You are in Texas at Baylor. You have resources, money, in-state recruiting, and your team is not very good. That's unacceptable, especially coming off of those Art Briles years. Baylor averages 29.3. Solid defense so far. They give up 9.7. Colorado averages 23 points a game. They give up 21 points a game. Colorado, they can throw the ball. They love to sling it. Shedeur has 999 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 picks. He's on his way to a first round. The guy can sling it. Off the field sideshow, but they do love to throw. They do not run very well at all. They throw for 349.7 yards a game, run for 61.3. You need to get the running game sorted out. If you win this game, you'll get the 3-1, but you still have, Kansas in the conference. You have Kansas State. You have Utah. You have Oklahoma State. Too many good teams are still in the conference that you could potentially have to play during the season in the Big 12 championship. I did not have Colorado getting a bowl game in my preseason video, but it's still in front of them. Everything's in front of them. The defense played a lot better last week. They showed some improvement, continue to build on those blocks, and surprise everyone. I have Colorado State getting the win here. Travis Hunter, Horn Jr., Shedeur Sanders. I have them winning this one. Let's put it at a 32-20 game. So that would be covering the spread, but going with the under. So that's our breakdown of just some of those non-top 25 games that I found pretty interesting. It's our predictions. It's our best bets. Go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. If you have any comments, drop them below, and I'll respond. Thank you.